Some wounds don't come from one moment. They come from years of surviving things we never should have had to survive. And for many people, healing doesn't start with fixing their life. It starts with finally telling themselves the truth. Today's conversation is about the inner healing, self forgiveness, and remembering that your beginning does not get to decide your ending. So, hey everyone, welcome back to another powerful episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we talk about real healing in real human terms. I'm your host Avik, and today I'm joined by Anjalia McGoldrick. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Avik. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Anjalia. So, Anjalia is a trauma informed psychotherapist, metaphysician, motivational speaker, founder of Life in Balance Counseling and Wellness Center, and the author of The Child I Left Behind. So, her story is one of the profound trauma, resilience, and reinvention. And today, we are exploring how to heal the wounds within, release shame, and reclaim hope, no matter where life began for you. So, wait, let's just start. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much, Avik. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So, Anjali, like before we go into the tools and the insights, I definitely love to start with like when you reflect on your own journey, what was the moment you realized that you were no longer just surviving, but actually ready to heal?
It took a long journey, Avik. I had started out in life as a young mother. I was catapulted into adulthood at age 9. I was pregnant by the time I was 13. And I was out in the world as a young mother in a very abusive relationship at 14 years old that I only escaped with my life at 16. And I had to make a very difficult decision that was heart-wrenching to leave my child behind. And, I was catapulted out into in the world all alone. And I knew then that if it was going to be, it was up to me because I had no one. And I really put a lot of work in to just get out of survival mode. But I knew is if I got an education and I owned a business, that I could move out of poverty. And so I got really busy healing my life through working and creating successful adventures along the way. But it wasn't back until I was in midlife before I was able to slow down enough to recognize that the deep wounds and the trauma that I had suffered as a child and a young girl and a young mother were still there and really needed my attention. And it wasn't until I was able to just really slow down and look within and recognize that even though I had attained all of my dreams, I'd become very successful, that there was still a lot of pain there that really needed my attention.
I agree. I totally agree on this. Yeah. And like I mean, I have to say that distinction matters so much, and surviving keeps us alive. Like healing gives us our life back, right? So, uh, and also about the common misconception. I mean, many people believe that healing means forgetting the past or being over it. So, from your experience, what's the biggest misunderstanding that people have about what real healing actually looks like?
Well, I often hear the comment that the past is in the past from my clients as a psychotherapist. And the past is not in the past if it keeps showing up in the now moment. The past is in the past, but the wounds that we carry are still in that. They're still showing up in our lives, they're still calling for us to help them heal. And so it's very important for us to slow down and take some time to really notice what's going on within ourselves. And, you know, the wounds that we carry are there until we take the time to go within and look at them and to begin to heal them. And what happens is that we oftentimes, in fact, project our wounds out onto other people through blame, through
Mm.
projecting our own fears and hurts and pains upon others. And what needs to happen is for us to slow down. And when we are triggered, hurt people,
Mm.
even when we don't mean to. And we do that through difficult relationships because we project out our pain and the unmet needs onto our partners and onto our relationships. And if we can recognize that this is an unhealthy pattern and that we need to slow down and help to heal that pain within, and it is about us, it's not about the other person. And they're just mirroring back what it is that we're feeling about ourselves. And so it's very important for us to take some time to slow down and notice the patterns in our lives and go within and find those little wounded parts and to reparent them. I call them the inner child, but they can be called inner wounds or inner wounded parts or even our shadow parts. And those are the things that we hide, deny, and repress. And they need our attention. And when we can slow down and say,
Mm.
gosh, I really got triggered by my spouse saying something to me and it hurt my feelings, and oftentimes what happens is people blame the spouse or the other person that's bringing this to their attention. But if we could slow down enough to look at that pain of that and say, well, where's that coming from? You can start to begin to notice where those wounds are and that still need our attention. For me, I mentioned that I grown up and I was in poverty and I had an awful lot to overcome. I was abandoned. I didn't have parents that were there to support me. And throughout my life, I carried a lot of guilt and shame over the decision to have to leave my child behind. And that played out later in my life when my daughter came back into my life and we tried to reconcile. And at every turn, we butted heads because the wounds within each of us continued to reflect on each other. It wasn't until I went through my own healing journey of that I was able to peel back the layers and gain insights and understandings that this guilt and shame that I felt and my daughter's life not working out and her continually self-sabotaging, I always felt like it was my fault and I felt like I needed to fix her. And it wasn't until I went on my own healing journey in midlife that I was able to recognize it was the guilt and the shame that was driving the bus of my life. And when her life wasn't working out, I felt like it was my fault. And I kept trying to fix her. And in the message I was sending to her was that there was something wrong with her. And there was nothing wrong with her. I was just wounded in need of healing. And she wasn't broken in need of fixing. And once I was able to heal, I was able to come back into that relationship with that and show up in a way with compassion and understanding and listening and being able to hold space instead of reacting to her and judging her or wanting her to get fixed so that I could feel better.
I agree. Wow. So, like, what tends to happen when people try to rush healing or I would say bypass the pain instead of meeting it with honesty?
Yes, that happens so often as people do try to bypass the pain and they cover it up through overworking, which I did for many years, or alcoholism or substance abuse or many other addictions that we get food and many other addictions that can kind of feel it kind of fills that little wounded space for a temporary fix.
Mm.
But until we can really get down in there and kind of look inside and see what's going on. And it does take some time and it takes some effort and it takes being really aware and ready to really delve into that because it's painful. People don't want to feel pain. They do everything they can to run away from it. But change can happen when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. And when we embark upon the healing journey, what happens is because oftentimes we've been traumatized or have gone through some really difficulties that our brain automatically when we have difficulties come up again in our life where we start to change things, it gets scared and it goes into fear mode and we go into fight or flight. But what we have to do is just to take that very first step, that first step in a new direction. And when the fear comes up, just say, "Oh, honey, it's okay. We're not back in the past. We're right here in the future. This old feeling is from the past and it's showing up now because it just needs our attention. And I feel you," and allow yourself to go within Avik and just to feel the feelings. Give some compassion to it and say, let's just take this step forward. And if mistakes happen, all those mistakes are is lessons for us to learn, and we just take the next step forward. And so healing begins as we take one step at a time, day by day, recognizing and noticing any triggers, any emotions that are coming up that are unsettling. That is our bodies telling us that it needs our attention. And it's not anyone else's fault. It's about the wound that still is living within you from something that has happened in the past.
Totally agree. Totally agree. That's really powerful. And healing isn't kind of erasing the past, but it's changing how the past lies inside you. Right. So, and then obviously that often brings us face to face with the deeper patterns. So that's very true. Yep.
Absolutely. And we don't only carry our own wounded patterns. Oftentimes we carry those generational patterns from our ancestors, from our parents who are just repeating the same patterns because they have never gotten their needs met and they don't know how to get them met in a healthy and positive way. And so they continue to repeat them until they are willing to slow down enough to take the time and stop covering up the pain and masking the pain and living as if this thing is not there. And when they can slow down enough and heal some of those generational wounds and look back at the patterns of your parents and your grandparents and the patterns that you're repeating that aren't working in your lives, then you can begin to heal and begin that healing journey. And it definitely, in fact, it is a journey, you know? It's a journey that we must take every day, recognizing our patterns. And it's so amazing as I have gone through my own healing journey to recognize how I show up differently, especially with my daughter, or how because I react differently, or I'm able to not become triggered because I'm able to heal that part of myself. It does no longer bother me.
Yep.
I'm able to respond to her in such a much healthier way, and we don't butt heads anymore. It's just such an amazing, amazing path.
True. Very true. Yep. Okay. And for someone who recognizes themselves, like what I'm saying is in everyday life, how we unhealed the inner wounds, it tends to show up. So, especially in the relationships, parenting, or kind of self worth. So, for someone who is listening who recognizes themselves into this, what's the one sign that their inner child is asking for attention rather than kind of criticism?
Yeah. So it's very simple. Anytime that you get upset, triggered, angry, sad, mad, you're tearful, somebody has hurt your feelings, you've noticed yourself blaming someone, or just any of those negative emotions that arise in day-to-day life, even in traffic, you see people, with road rage, they're angry. There's something inside of you that is calling you to turn within and to really take a moment to go back and say, okay, where am I feeling that in my body? Is that oftentimes it's in our throat or in our heart or in our gut. Sometimes it can be on our arms or our head, but we just notice that feeling and we go within and we could say, okay, what is really going on here? This person that's driving crazy, that's making me crazy, they just got up just like I did. They're not out to get me today. What am I believing about this situation? And where is that coming from? And when we can go back in and find out, oh my gosh, yes, little one, I know you didn't have, no one listened to you. No one was there to hear you. Noticing what it is that you were needing, that you weren't getting. Why are you so angry at the traffic? Because you're in a hurry. You're afraid you're going to be late. Maybe when you were younger, if you weren't on time, you got criticized or blamed or made fun of. That little child is still in there waiting for someone to show up with love and compassion to reparent them with kindness. And we could just go back in and hold our little heart and say, or wherever the pain is coming from, okay, little one, it's okay. I'm here for you now. I'm your higher, wiser self, and I'm here to help you heal and to understand and give you what you needed then and what you need now so that you don't have to continue to feel this way, precious one. And I'm always going to be here when you need me. And the more often that you can practice this going within and nurturing that little wounded part,
Mm.
the safer it feels. And then the brain, which, like I said, reacts to fight or flight when it feels unsafe, it starts to calm. And we no longer have these big reactions because we're getting the needs met that weren't met when we were a little child or a younger self.
Correct. Correct. Very true. Yeah. So healing is obviously really linear. And when old wounds resurface or someone feels like they are sliding backward, then what do you want them to remember in that moment?
That we're human, and that it takes time to heal and to just really have compassion for ourselves. I write about in my book, The Child I Left Behind, the incredible journey towards forgiving not only those that hurt me and caused me so much pain in my life, but especially for myself. And, being able to have some compassion towards ourselves and others, that we are all human, that hurt people, and that we make mistakes. And, when we don't allow ourselves to heal the unforgiveness and we carry that around, it's a massive wound against ourselves while the other person is out living their life. Forgiveness is the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, and turning within with compassion, care, and understanding that, that we were only just a child. We didn't know what to do, or we were only just young. And we did the very best that we knew how to do at the time, and turn compassion on and, just allow ourselves to say, you know what? Here's what I did. And oftentimes when we pull it out of ourselves, this is what I did. Because in our minds, we imagine things so much worse than what they truly are. And when we could pull it out and say, hey, this is what I did, you know, and these are the mistakes that I made. And you know what? Gosh, when I was 14 years old or 8 years old or 25 or 30, I did the very best I could. And even when we're older, we make mistakes. And you know what? That was the best skills that I had at the time. And you know what? I learned a lot from those lessons because every wound, every trauma, every mistake, and every pain is here to teach us something. And if we can recognize that there's a lesson in this, what did I learn from these horrible things that happened to me? I know for me, I was kicked out into the world when I was 14 years old with a young baby. And I got in an abusive relationship that was horrible. And I was out again on my own at 16, facing the most difficult decision of my life to leave my child behind. Horrible.
Right.
And I could have stayed stuck down there, blaming everybody, being mad and angry. But what I recognized is that every single thing that's happened in my life came as a lesson. They came into my life to teach me something. And the most difficult struggles that I've ever gone through were some of the greatest lessons that I've learned. And I've learned compassion and caring and understanding and forgiveness. And those are powerful. And if we can just turn those towards ourselves and allow ourselves to let go of unforgiveness and stop carrying all of these wounds,
Mm.
help them to heal, and we can live a much better, healthier, and joyful life.
True. 100% agree. Yeah. But for the listeners who feels defined by the past and quietly believes that it's too late for them, then what truth would you want them to hear right now?
Well, what I want you to know is that
Mm.
I totally understand where you are. I found myself there when I was 16 years old. I went through a lot of heartaches and difficulties. I was out in the world on my own with nothing. I had only finished the 8th grade. I didn't have anywhere to turn, and I know what it's like to feel like you're stuck, alone, and hopeless. What I want you to know, and I talk about this through my book, The Child I Left Behind, it's a beautiful journey and a amazing portrayal of what is possible in your life, no matter where you start. And what I want you to know is that you are not stuck. You are not alone, and that you just only have to take that first step forward and start to begin the healing journey.
Exactly. Exactly true. Lovely. So, any suggestion that you want to give to the listeners today?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love for you to check out my book on Amazon.com. It's The Child I Left Behind, A Mother's Journey Towards Healing and Forgiveness by Anjalia McGoldrick. And what I want you to take away from today is that you are a beautiful light, that you have a beautiful light within you. And oftentimes the world, through disappointments, trauma, and struggles, have dimmed our light within. By holding on to unforgiveness and hurts and pains, we dim our own light. And the most amazing and positive thing that we can do is to go back in and allow ourselves to find that light again, to encourage ourselves and say positive things like, you can do it. Let's just take the first step. We can get through this. There's always hope. Our brain doesn't know the difference between what we imagine and what we visualize. And so start
Yeah.
visualizing a beautiful future ahead. And please reach out. I have a website, AnjaliaMcGoldrick.com, and it's ANJALIAMCGOLDRICK.com. Stay in touch with me, and I'd be happy to um, respond and get back with you with any ideas that you have or any guidance along the way.
Amazing. Amazing. So, I'll include all this into the show notes, dear listeners, for your easy reference. And if this conversation stirred something inside you, then take a breath and honor that. Healing begins the moment you choose curiosity over judgment. So, thank you so much for spending this time with us on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, dear listeners. And please share this episode with someone who needs hope today. And for sure, I'll see you in the next one. So, this is your host, Avik. Take care of your mind and your life. Thank you so much.